of Awesomism podcast. I am Lynn, aka Awesomism Mom. I am your host today, and I want everybody to go grab a cup of coffee or hot tea and drink it, sit back and listen while we discuss lots of awesome things, especially autism. And thank you, Zelena Hull, my favorite autism country recording artist, for that intro music. So today I am so excited to have one of my favorite people, Michael. Michael and I have been friends for some time now. And honestly, Michael makes me laugh so much. I'm serious. I even wrote a blog about him. It's called His Perspective. If you go to my website and look it up, because Michael always gives me fantastic perspective. When I'm dealing with so much, I go to Michael and he just evens the water. So I'm going to turn it over to Michael and I'm going to let him tell you about himself and how we met and all kinds of fun things. And we'll go from there. So,
Speaking of perspective, I'm changing my angle a little bit so I can be more credibly looking at the camera and you at the same time, as well as any notes I may have and all that kind of stuff. Thanks so much for having me on. Now, we go back many years, and it's been a very fun ride. It's been obviously a very weird number of years, but we met Lynn and I because we had a shared passion for a hotel chain that was so unhinged that the hotel chain actually invited us to be part of their insiders like message board club, and then we sort of had a race to the bottom in terms of who could be more honest about the positives and negatives. And
that's
it's funny. Companies tend to like positives more than negatives, but I enjoy the company. I'm still a loyal client of that company. I'm not sure if we're supposed to reveal which one it is. I'll leave that up to Lynn. But we just sort of met. Not only did I meet Lynn and we became wonderful friends, we met an entire oddball cast of characters, many of whom I still am very happy to call friends, from very different walks of life, and it really gave me a wonderful perspective on not only the kinds of people that spend months away from home and have a worldview, but also of just how many smart different perspectives there are out there about major business topics and life topics and so on. So it's been a great ride, and at some point, Lynn was always very kind to pity laugh at my attempts at humor on the posts, uh, and uh, and we just hit it off well, And then it turns out that we also had a shared interest in autism. And unlike me, she's actually been you've been very proactive about it. I've been trying to become more so. So I assume everyone listening to your podcast sort of knows your story. I come from a family that has several individuals, on various parts of the spectrum, or in many cases, my cousin. Actually, this is unfortunate news. My cousin passed away last week of COVID, and he was an autistic adult that was never diagnosed, as a child, and so he went through, nearly 50 years of the challenges that come, and it's obviously a tough thing for us, but luckily, toward the end of his life, through the intervention of my mom and other relatives, he sort of got to understand that things hadn't just been wrong with him his whole life, and so there's always a positive element to that feeling. And so I also have some nieces, nephews, other family members that are members of the autistic community and have everyone's got their own. It's very personal, like anything else. It's funny because a few years ago, a family member of mine battled cancer, and all sickness in its own way is personal, but also all abilities are personal. And so something, I was watching recently. I don't know if you've ever seen, Lynn, the Roger Ebert and the Gene Siskel review of Rain Man. Have
mm-hmm.
you had a chance to watch it?
Yes.
They talk about autism as a sickness, right? As a
Mm-hmm.
thing to be cured. And one of the things that I'm so optimistic about, and one of the things we're going to talk about today, is that not only are we reframing what it means to have brains that function differently and operate differently and perspectives that operate differently, but also technologies are emerging not only to allow us to better understand autism and the skills, the challenges that come with it, but also to make some steps towards giving people not only with autism, but with any kind of special view or feeling or operating process, tools to cope and to ultimately lead toward the thing that I think, we ultimately want, which is independence, right? We want people to have an independence over their lives, and an understanding of being able to operate. And obviously, I have family members that are further along and require special care, and that's just the nature of the beast. But there's just so much happening now that will allow autistic adults to lead better lives, to have a better chance in the workplace, and to tap into the skills that they do have, and at the same time to give autistic children a chance for lives and careers that weren't possible for people like my cousin. So
Yes.
and I think that things that I'm interested in, augmented reality, virtual reality, this larger world of extended reality, are going to be a key part of contributing to that, I hope.
No, I agree. And I'm so sorry about your cousin.
Appreciate it.
It really, those are the kind of stories that really touch my heart. But I agree with you. There are a lot of older autistic adults that were never diagnosed with it. And that's why, the CDC came out with the number 5.6 million. And every time I talk about it, be it on here or to groups or to anything, I always say the same thing. The number's more like 7 to 7.5 million, because there are so many older autistic adults that were never diagnosed.
Yeah.
And I have a cousin that I'm convinced was on the spectrum. And, you know, I think it's wonderful, as sad as his passing is, that you guys were able to allow him to understand that it was okay what he was, who he was as a
Yep.
human. And that's part of the reason. And everybody that follows my blog or me knows that that's why I call it Awesomism. It's not that it's so awesome to be autistic. It's it's awesome to be your own person. And
Exactly.
that,
Well
you
said.
know,
Yeah.
and that's what I've always said to Peyton is, Peyton, you're that one of 58 and the rest of us are the same. And you're awesome because you are different. And I
Yeah.
wanted him to grasp that difference.
Yeah.
And that's what the awesomism is about, is it's about be proud of who you are. Be proud of what you're given, because we have the old expression whenever things have happened and we're sorry for them in our past, and we always say, you do the best you can with the tools available to you. Well, that's it with autism. Be the best you can be. And I
Yeah.
feel like Peyton is amazingly awesome. I'm proud of him. He's my hero. He gets up every morning and faces challenges that I don't, that a lot of us don't. And God bless him that he does it, because he does it with a smile on his face. And
Yeah.
it isn't always awesome. And there's days he has really rough days, but I try so hard to make it the best I can. And as far as that hotel chain goes, I'm not going to say what it is. It's one of the higher end ones. And anybody that knows me either knows what it is or knows the hotel that I always stayed at in Dubai. So
Yeah.
if you know that, because that was my favorite hotel on this planet. So
Well, and I hope someday that we get a chance to meet at either that or some other wonderful spot whenever things have cleared up. Speaking of Peyton, as you know, I had in my front window as my primary Christmas decoration this year, several pieces that Peyton designed with the, what was it, chalk couture? Is that what it's called?
yeah.
Yeah, and I got a lot of compliments for it. And I'm such a lazy decorator. Oh my goodness. For me, it's one thing to have a candle, but to light a candle, I'm like, okay, is this now a production company? Why don't we just got fireworks, right? So for me to put up any decorations of any kind gets noticed, but I got a lot of compliments about it. It looked professional to me. I mean, really impressive. The attention to detail, the patience. I don't have that. We've talked about that. You know, uh, I just don't have that. And mind you, I have a work ethic, for my main work as well as the side company that I own. But you know your skills, right? And
Mhm.
that to me, for anybody, for anyone who's facing any set of challenges, whether it be challenges that have to do with how you perceive the world or challenges of access to resources, the gift of technology is that if we apply it correctly and we give people the opportunity, that they have the opportunity to find out how to be the best that they can be, and to feel rewarded. And there's some cool stuff that's happening in that, and I'm hoping to get more involved in that over time. In the XR, the VR, and the AR environment. But yeah, so that's a long-winded recap of how we met, and I'm still in touch with several people from that group. I actually saw one of them today in
Oh,
New York
really?
City. Yeah,
Nice.
I saw Joe. So
Oh, tell him
yeah,
I said hi.
I will. It was wonderful to see him. We had a good lunch and just sort of reminisced about how nice it is to see people. And we spoke fondly of several folks from that board who have their quirks, and people I'd love to see again soon. Shared friends who live very different lives than we do.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, one in particular.
Oh yes,
Um,
yeah.
I would love to have us all meet up in Dubai at that hotel and just have the time of our life, because
Oh, yeah.
that hotel, the service at that hotel is just, it's just second to none. And I've stayed at the top ones in Dubai, and I gotta tell you, I think this one's the best.
Yeah, I've heard nothing but great reviews, and it's amazing when you find a place where people care and people tap in any industry where passion comes through. It really changes the experience, and I think that's one of the things that I come back to in terms of watching my mother and my father and my sister help my niece, my niece who's on the spectrum. Is the challenges are great, but the rewards are incredible, and there is a fundamental joy that comes. It just when you watch any child grow up, you want to see them happy, you want to see them learning and discover and curious and forming the ability to think metaphorically and to become curious and to interrogate their surroundings. And I sort of look forward to the day whenever it's not a different experience to see a child with autism experience that. It's just its own path, right?
Yes.
So
You were saying Peyton's stuff that he has in his Team Austinism Etsy shop.
yeah.
One of the things I'm the most impressed with is he has the patience to do it. He's very calm with it. It's very calming for him, but also he makes some changes with it. Like he did one today, and he took the stencil pieces that I provided. He picked all the colors, and then he said to me, I think it's really missing something. And he went outside of what he had seen anywhere and changed it. And so it's allowing him to use his creativity in a way as well that I just think is fantastic. And,
Mhm.
He's doing so well with it. I mean, I think some of his pieces, he's got some coming out. He hasn't been posting as many on his site lately because we got a table at a local event here coming up,
Mhm.
as well as we were approached by a brick and mortar store to sell some of his products in it.
Wonderful.
Yes, so he's kind of hoarding some of his better products right now because he wants so badly to keep them for those events. And I keep trying to explain to him that we've got time to make more, but I don't want to stress him because he loves it so much.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of letting him. And here's a really, really cute story. You know the story about Lloyd, Big Lloyd, the one
Yeah.
that we got the home for. So I put out, Peyton made this adorable one yesterday of an RV. It's a little camper, and it says, this is how we roll. And Peyton had to overlay. I'm telling you, I would have never gotten this done because he had to overlay 7 different things to make it work.
Yeah.
It would have been out the window, okay, and in the garbage can. That would have been it. And he just made it his own. He changed some things. He made it so beautifully. So I was proud of him. So he wanted to sell it in the upcoming event. And I said, well, I'm going to put it out there because I'm so proud of you with this. And it was barely out there. And somebody came to me and said, I want to anonymously buy that. I hadn't even put a price on it yet. I want to anonymously buy that and send that to Lloyd as a housewarming gift. And that just touched my heart because it showed me once again that Peyton doing his Etsy shop and making something brought emotion in someone else,
Yeah.
to share with another autistic adult. And it's just little things like that that just touch me so much about And this is what keeps me doing what I'm doing. I mean, I get up, sometimes I get very down and feel like, am I doing enough? Am I doing it wrong? People make snide comments to me like, well, somebody's already doing that. There's no reason for you, or this or that, or, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Why don't you go get a real job? This sort of thing. And then I go and get a parent to come to me and say, I just want you to know something. And this has happened to me multiple times. I have been watching you. I've been reading your blogs. I've listened to your podcast. And I got to tell you, you give me confidence for the future. And thank you for sharing. And thank you for giving me the positive side of things, because it's so easy to fall into the negative side. And that's what I've said to you. When I get really down and depressed, I call you and I talk to you, and you give me that perspective. And I try very hard, because I know what it means to me to have you. I try to be that for the parents that are feeling sometimes like they're out in the middle of the pool and there's no life jacket and they can't swim. I
Yeah.
want to be that, life raft and say, hey, I'm here. I'm trying to share with you the positives, because it's very easy to be negative about everything, especially with what's going on in the world.
Oh, sure.
But that doesn't do anything to anybody.
No, especially, talk about feeling like you're on your own. Uh, Nothing has become more clear than which schools, I think, have really an understanding of autistic needs
Yep.
than this back and forth, start and stop, will they, won't they? Everyone's in school, everyone's out of school thing, and of course, I agree with being careful, but at the same time, it's exposing a lot of holes in the system, and it's exposing just how, in many cases, on your own you can feel when you have any special schooling situation. And I'm really hopeful that technology will allow for changes in that, um, especially because there's an entire generation of autistic children in their formative years who aren't going to be pushed into situations where they learn to read nonverbal social cues from their peers, right? And that kind of stuff too. And so there's going to be some makeup that has to happen there, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And one of the things that I love about the potential, especially of augmented reality, is that it may help that. I don't know how familiar you are with augmented reality or the extended reality space, or if I should give a quick recap of what it is. But
Do it just for the listeners, for those
sure.
who aren't.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different terms out there: extended reality or XR, virtual reality, VR, augmented reality. Virtual reality is the term most people have heard of the most. They think of the headsets you put on. Virtual reality, essentially think of complete immersion. You put on a big headset and everything you see completely is another world. So you're totally lost in a full digital alternate experience. And eventually, I imagine that would include things like sight and smell and so on. So the holodeck in Star Trek would be truly virtual reality. But VR always sort of had a bit of a gimmick feel and sort of a hokiness to it. Obviously, putting on that headset and then trying to do anything, if you try to go too far, you'll stumble over something. And augmented reality really caught up and surpassed it. And augmented reality is where you're seeing reality, but there's computer graphics over it, or there's experiences over it. So if you've ever used a Facebook filter where you make your face look like a dog, or if you've ever
Yes.
used, something that looks like someone my age, like it's out of a science fiction book, where you see words over the world, that's all augmented reality. And so these eyeglasses that have been sort of start and stopped introduced, that allow you to see real stuff, but also view, words or view perceptions on it, or what we call activations. Whenever a retail outlet, for example, has an augmented or a virtual reality experience, it's often called an activation. Um, that's augmented reality, and extended reality just is sort of becoming the umbrella term for a lot of this. And there's a lot of different nuances to it, but it's been applied for a lot longer than people realize to the autistic community. I mean, 15 years ago, I don't remember where it was, and I should know this. There were tests being done using virtual reality and augmented reality, early augmented reality, to help autistic children learn how to cross the street alone. Crossing a street is obviously a time that requires not only a tremendous amount of focus, but also understanding the cues from the crossing, and also understanding that a car that's far away, maybe, you know, speeding and so on. There's a lot of different moving parts that would challenge anybody, let alone someone who might be focusing on the wrong thing, right? And they use this app. I think it was about 15 years ago in studies to test this. And so many other interesting tests have happened over the years. There was one. Trying to think of the name of it. I think it was something like Movi Latrondo, I think, out of Brazil, where what they actually did was they allowed school children, autistic school children, to see themselves, right? So there'd be a video feed where you saw yourself in front of a background, and
Mhm.
they'd actually show you letter or number combinations. And the idea was that you try to reach and touch the right one. So instead
Oh,
of having
wow.
to be precision, you could sort of say if you saw that the word was, I don't know, jump, and it was spelled right up here and wrong over here, you sort of learned to touch it. But at the same time, you were also learning your fine motor skills, right? You were building that
Oh,
skill,
yeah. Uh-huh.
and you were also learning, navigating a mirror image and so on. So the multiple layers to the learning of it. And in that case, again, you saw yourself, and so you also were able to see your own reaction, but you also saw these letters on the screen. That's a great example of augmented reality, right? Just something over it. And this has
Right.
also been used to try to help with attention focus, right? So they could take an actual toy, and they could even you can actually have augmented reality glasses on, and on the toy itself you'll see digital impulses. Maybe you'll see faces on characters and so on. So it gives you an extra level of focus to the toy. Um, and this really started to take off, and extraordinary things have been done in this area that I think you'd find really interesting. One of the ones that I find the most interesting is is this idea of allowing um, children with autism and even adults that maybe didn't have this training to practice in-person social interactions using augmented reality
Right.
to learn how to read and interpret verbal and nonverbal social cues.
I love
Um,
this.
yeah, so it's really cool. That was actually, um, I know there was one called the Brain Power. That's called the Brain Power Autism System, which was based on stuff on neuroscience stuff from Harvard, MIT. I believe that was the basis of actually a very successful Indiegogo campaign. I think they raised several $100,000. But there's been other stuff as well too. There's one, Autism XR, that actually is trying to build not only the ability to introduce that kind of element, but to determine things like where are the eyes focusing, reading your own expressions, determining how well you're doing with personal space. There's so much you can do there. And then there's one I heard about the other day that actually, the idea behind it is to allow, when kids feel like they need their safe space, allow them to sort of dim everything and hide a little bit. There's so much being done right now that I find so interesting, all over the world. It's really kind of a cool time to see. But one came up the other day, and again, I don't feel free to interrupt anytime. I'll rattle on, as you know,
No, I know, but
forever.
I'm loving this. I'm absolutely loving this.
One that came up the other day that I thought was really interesting was the question of, can you use these augmented reality glasses to give the caregiver a sense of the experiences? So imagine if you had
Oh,
if you had a
yes.
very, let's say not maybe not as high functioning an autistic child,
Right.
and you're both wearing these glasses, and you can get a sense of where are they focusing, what are they looking at, how are they interpreting an environment. You might be able to understand how to better structure the environment you're in. All this kind of research is out there being done. And there was a thing a couple years ago at the Victoria and Albert Museum, and you'll see this other places too. These very well-meaning sort of first steps to say, here's what it feels like to be autistic. They'll show you, bright lights, for example, or there's a really good one online that says, modulate the noise here for what you're used to, and then here's how loud it'll be if a bus goes by. But of course, it's one thing to sort of get that visually, or it's another thing to sort of be in the world the whole time.
Right.
And augmented reality and other things that sort of help adjust your environment has the potential to actually fight some of those problems. So if you had, artificial intelligence capable of telling whenever it appears that the person is responding to brighter lights and able to dim the lights and keep it at a more normal sort of even focus. You might allow someone who's an autistic adult to work in an environment like a warehouse where you might be exposed to big changes in light and darkness and noise and so on, with less struggles of that nature, or with less if they have earpieces that help create decibel caps, they might have it lowered whenever they're experiencing it louder, right? So again, this is some of this is our ideas that being we're not there yet in some cases. Some of them might not be scientifically valid. I'm not an expert on the subject the way I wish I were. I'm more of a passionate, person and a member of the virtual reality, augmented reality community who finds this topic interesting and has done my own connections and research on it. But just seeing what's out there, it does really encourage me. There's something called A Project Lab. It's run by Julia Lim. I think it's Julia. I think Julia Su Young Lim is her name, and they have a mission. And actually, let me open it because I don't want to get it wrong since I named the person. Yeah, they have a vision. Here we go. A world where children with autism can learn wherever and whenever they want. And so they actually have tools that are about social interaction using Microsoft HoloLens, helping younger children recognize shapes while staying engaged. So there's a lot of people out there working in the augmented and virtual reality right now on this problem. On this. Well, there's a series of problems to solve, right? It's how do
Right.
we
Absolutely.
yeah. How do we help? And again, I'm particularly optimistic for thinking about my cousin again. We're at a strange time because with medical care improving so much, with understanding improving so much, there could be someone out there who's 50 years old right now who finds out this late in life that they are on
Yes.
the spectrum, and because of medical care, they might have 50 or more years left of a lifetime, right? So we're going to have um, previously undiagnosed, previously untreated autistic adults living longer than ever and facing the financial burden of that,
Absolutely.
and
That's my big
yeah,
drum I beat every day is this: how can we help prepare autism families and autistic adults for the future?
yeah,
Okay, because there is so much technology like you're talking about, which me. This is my passion. I mean, even when I was on that insider board for the hotel, every other post I put was something to do with autism. I mean, I talked about the one particular part of this chain, remember, because they were all designed the same colors, the same type. And I said, we particularly liked that part of the hotel chain because there was commonality for Peyton.
yeah,
Remember, you and I had this conversation.
sure,
He didn't feel as stressed when we would go there because he felt like, okay, I've already seen all this. I've already been in this kind of a hallway. He didn't feel, as stressed. And I'll go back to Lloyd because Lloyd is my favorite person to talk about because he is what really inspired me to get even more involved in helping adults for the future because of his situation. And
hmm
now that his mother has passed. Okay. Um, the more technology that we get to help them, be it like you said, in a job, even in their home or whatever, because we are never going to have enough assisted living
yep,
for all of them. And even if we do, how many parents can put between $1 and $3 million away just for that autistic child,
yeah,
right? For their care. So if they can live in a home, be it with a sibling who is married and goes to work, but then they can stay in the home, or live in an apartment with 3 other autistic adults, or in a home. And we have all this technology that allows them to be able to do this. These are so many things that will help parents be less stressed and autistic adults. I mean, I'm going to give 2 quick stories. When Peyton was going to be 18, I said to him, aren't you excited you're going to be 18? Me and his stepdad, Mark, who he, considers his dad.
sure,
Um, aren't you excited? And he acted really weird about it. And so I said to my other 3 kids, I said, ask Peyton why he's kind of acting strange about turning 18. I didn't get it. So finally he sat down with me and Mark and he started crying. He said, I don't want to be 18. I can't live on my own. And we said, Peyton, you don't have to live on your own. But my siblings did. See,
Right.
he saw them going off to college. He saw them going and having a life. He saw them getting careers. He saw them having girlfriends and boyfriends and, moving on with their lives and going. I mean, my daughter was, 19 years old, traveling through Jordan, Egypt, and Israel, backpacking and
Right.
sleeping in a cave in Petra. And Peyton suddenly, it hit him. Oh no, I'm becoming an adult and I'm going to have to go live on my own. And I don't even know how to drive a car. And
Hmm.
I can never take care of myself. And then we had the long talk with him. And while he was thrilled that he didn't have to go live by himself, he was also somewhat more upset because he was never going to have the life that his siblings had.
Yeah.
So, it was this really damned if I do and damned if I don't type conversation. And so I just feel so strongly that the more technology, the more that we discuss these kind of things, that's part of the reason why I was super excited to have you on here, because I know that's what you work in. And I thought we could, every ounce of hope that an autism family has is that much less stress that they get up with in the morning.
Oh yeah.
And, they say that we have the same stress level and the same characteristics as PTSD because we worry so much and stress so much. So every ounce of stress, that's my whole goal with my podcast and my blog. Take some of that stress and base it with reality, not fantasy, la la. Oh, don't worry about it. It's all
Right.
going to work.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And there is a lot of stress. And to your point about having a so-called normal life, one of the only, I think, blessings of this pandemic, and there's very few blessings to this pandemic, but I think it's going to normalize the idea that you can be a work from home employee and still operate. And there are some autistic adults that, going to an office every day, commuting and so on and so forth, the amount of emotional toll that takes can actually affect job performance. Whereas if you're able to be in a room you recognize every day, you might be able to direct more of that into your career. There's just going to be opportunities and possibilities there. Now, I do worry that there will be, in some cases, lost opportunities for, social challenges and interaction.
Yes.
That's going to be a thing that families will have to, and caregivers will have to work for, as well as autistic adults that are interested in facing that. I think that'll be important and always there. But it comes down to, again, giving options and
Yes.
giving possibilities. Every time I read, I think within the last year or two, the Department of Labor said that most autistic adults, coming out of school, basically just can't find a job.
No, they
And
have a very high unemployment rate.
yeah, and it's one of those things where, as a society, whether it's has to do with where you come from or race or background or anything, when you have the absence of hope as an
Yes.
institutional element that defines how you see yourself, it's a poison, right? And it's a poison
Yes.
that everyone is responsible for battling. And I think technology will help us get there, especially with augmented and with extended reality. Now, of course, I'm sure there'll be all sorts of horrible things that will come with it because
Yeah.
technology always has a devil in the caboose. But we'll have a new set of problems to deal with when it happens. Oh, well, I'll give you a great example, which is the ability to especially if you're lonely, to talk. My niece is sitting at home or bored and they're lonely, and there's so many games out there that allow you to talk to other people. And for all you know, it could be an adult. I mean, all the kind of things
Yes.
that a parent worries about. And in this world of Zoom and augmented reality, you're going to have more access to video content. There's going to be a need to understand what's safe and so on. So all those new nightmares that come almost make me really miss the 1970s.
Yeah, I know. But you touched on something too when you said, they get very stressed and alone and stuff. And I think the other side of that too, which is something that I'm really trying to really guide my podcast towards, is if parents are less stressed, if parents have more openness towards things and feel like there is light at the end of the tunnel, then the children and they can be adults. I mean, Peyton's 21. Okay. He's not a child anymore. He's
Right.
an adult. He's less stressed. When I'm not as stressed, he's less stressed. And you were saying working from home. That's one positive that came for Peyton, because Peyton has wanted to work at home. He has not wanted to go out and get a job. He builds websites. He does his chalk couture. He does he does graphic design. He does other things. He's written blogs. He owns Team Awesomism, his little company. And, I've had people close to me within family and friends, well, he needs to get out there. He needs to get a job. He needs to this. He needs to that. And, I'm not going to spend all my hours arguing with them about, well, I'm glad you know better what's better for Peyton than what Peyton knows,
Right.
or
Yeah.
what I do, who's with him 24/7. And I've had that serious conversation with Peyton. Would you like to go on? No. He feels much more secure, and his stress level goes from here to here when he walks into his office that he has in the house, his craft room, and his man cave. Well, he keeps very busy. He takes online college classes. He goes to all these different events at church. He does Zoom calls with other special needs adults. He's got a full life.
Yeah.
So, I think one thing that came out of this pandemic was he sat back and said, I can do this. It is okay for me to be home, even
Yeah.
if other people are chirping that. But I want to give a real quick virtual reality story that was really amazing. I was not really all that in tune with virtual reality. Peyton knew more about it. Well, we have a Indian motorcycle place right near us. Okay. It's kind of off the beaten path. And I saw an ad that said that they were going to be doing a virtual reality day at the place. And they were going to have corn chips and chili, which is one of Peyton's favorite meals. Okay. Like, you'd think he was born and raised a Texan. He loves this stuff. And so I said, hey, Peyton, does this sound good? He says, well, the corn chips and chili sounds great. I said, Peyton, I kind of want you to try the virtual. No, I don't think I'm interested, he says. I said, well, okay, we'll go for the corn chips and chili, because I thought maybe I can ease him into it. Now, this is a child who did not want to ride a bike. He was scared to death of bikes. And he was petrified of motorcycles. Like, if a motorcycle would go down the street, now I'm talking up until a couple of years ago, okay, he would just stop. If we were out taking the dogs for a walk and a motorcycle come by, he would just stop dead. And he was scared to death of them. So we go in there, and the guys at this place could not have been nicer. I mean, if anybody listening to this podcast goes to the Woodlands Indian motorcycle place, they're the best. If you're looking to buy something, just go visit them. They're the best. I told them, look, he's autistic. I'd like him to try the virtual reality you're doing. They sat down with him. They talked to him for a little while. They showed him the motorcycles. He got a little less stressed. He put on the virtual reality. He loved it. And when we were leaving, we're in the car, and he says, can we please stop at the bike shop? I want to look at bikes. Now, I had tried everything to get him not to be scared of these things. We went there. The virtual reality completely changed him, because all of a sudden, this kind of fear of the unknown that he couldn't quite put into his head, okay, became a known, and he completely changed. And ever since then, I've been a lot more fascinated with this virtual reality, because it took something that for 18 years of Peyton's life, he had an unbelievable fear of. I mean, my third child rides a bike all the time. He's obsessed with his bike. Okay. Like, he spent a lot of money on a bike. And Peyton used to say to me, I'm so worried that Preston's going to fall. Preston's going to fall on the bike. He shouldn't ride a bike. He shouldn't have a bike. After that, he's like, I'm jealous Preston has a bike. So just this 25, 30 minutes at this motorcycle place doing virtual reality took Peyton from this to this.
Yeah.
I mean, how amazing is that?
It is amazing, and I think that's one of the things I think is so great about any kind of extended reality is it offers all kinds of opportunities for context and for connection that you never know when one's going to grab you. When I first tried virtual reality, I was born with very poor hearing, And at least one of my semicircular canals only knows who knows what's wrong with it. But I mean, my whole life, if I go on a roller coaster, if I spin around, just write me off for the rest of the day. I went on the roller coaster at a theme park here in New Jersey, and as I was getting off, I said to my friend, "Do me a favor, like it guide me over to a park bench, sit me down, and then sneak up behind me with a hammer and just hit me here till I stop moving, because that sounds more pleasant than me ever going back on that roller coaster again." Right? Not my idea of a good time, but once I got used to it, especially with augmented reality, it opens the door to all types of experiences. Not only that allow me to participate in things maybe I can't. I used to be a big outdoorsman. I'm not in the shape to do it anymore. But sometimes the experience itself is enough, and it gives you context and understanding of other people and cultures. But also, what I'm really looking forward to is when we'll have access to surprisingly mundane to many people experiences, as well as to experiences that for all the people. I have friends that are autistic, and sometimes they'll say, I'm ashamed because I feel this way, and I'm like, listen, you're not the only one. Like, I have a friend who's like, I don't want to ever win an award because I don't want to speak in public. And I said, if you think that's just you, public speaking, I think, is the number one fear out there. And so if you had a program that was simply taken from someone who's sitting in an award ceremony for 3.5 hours, that you could watch and participate in and get a sense of how does it move, how do people behave, and so on, you might open up the capability for people that might be in that situation to study it. A friend of mine was worried because he was going to bring his son to a wedding for the first time. And a wedding's a very difficult social situation. There's sudden, like, very casual moments, and then there's very strict social norms. It's like you're all having a drinks, and all of a sudden music plays, and then the bride
Yeah.
walks in, and God forbid you're in the wrong place, right? And we're all used to it, but that can be really traumatizing
Yes.
if you're worried about that, and to be able to practice it in advance, um, allows not only that, but also allows autistic adults to contemplate going to industry conferences, participate in networking capabilities,
I
and do
love
things that
this.
that would just might not be available to them, in advance. And so, again, I've said it 1,000 times. I'm optimistic, but I'm really interested to see where it goes because, in part, because of the benefits that can be gained, I think this is also a rare case where maybe for the first time, um, if you think, if I told you about some of these cases where virtual and augmented reality has been used for 15 years, right, on autistic adults and children, I think that this is a case where people with autism have the opportunity to be early adopters and at the front of a piece of technology or type of technology, and to have some say in how it develops, in the decades to come. And that doesn't usually happen that way historically.
I agree. I love this so much. This, when I called you, because this, my viewing audience or my listenership doesn't know this, but I was really struggling with where I wanted to go with this because I wanted to. My big thing after what I've gone through with Lloyd for the last 3 years, I realize there are so many families out there that are spending every day just trying to survive, that they can't plan for the future. And when Lloyd's mom died suddenly, it really hit me. I mean, not only was she an amazing human being, but he was alone. And I said to you, and you know this because I called you and we talked for
Yeah.
quite a while. And I said, Michael, I want to make that difference. And I don't know how.
Yeah.
And you kind of got me on this path. And then I called you back and said, I know what I want to do. And I was excited because you kind of steered me there. Let's open the doors. Let's open the discussions. Let's bring all these topics out, be it financial, be it food, be it, how we can help change things, like you said, with schooling,
Hmm.
with everything, with this technology, especially. I was in a Clubhouse room the other day, and there was one of the experts on self-driving automobiles. And he and I talked offline afterwards. This made me want to do backflips around my backyard because I suddenly went, I'm 60 years old. Peyton is 21. I say that over and over. If I die at 85, if I, God willing, I'm able to live to 85, Peyton's still only going to be 46 years old. Okay. If he wants to go and have a job somewhere or needs to go drive back and forth, these kind of things coming in the future really do make me feel a lot less stressed
Oh yeah.
about it. I've said this 1,000 times, and I'm not saying it to, look at me, how great I am. I say it because this was part of my inspiration for doing this, is when Lloyd's mom called me and said, me getting them that home and knowing that Lloyd was going to be safe. And then his mom's friend, who I didn't even realize was her friend, she followed me for a year on Instagram and we just had chatted back and forth, came to me and said, we miss Deborah terribly, but with Lloyd having a guardian angel like you, he'll be okay. That spurred me so much inside to make that difference. And even though I'm not a tech person, I always tell my husband's, AWS certified. I took me like a week to even figure out what he was talking about. Okay. I always say, you could take what I know about technology, put it in a thimble and have plenty of room left over. But if I can bring on people like you and my other guests that I've been bringing on to talk about how we can make the future better and easier and, quite honestly, amazing and awesome for them, that's what this is about.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why when I said to you, will you come on my podcast? And you said, yes, I was so excited. And then when you sent me some of the topics you wanted to talk about, I have literally, seriously, been so excited all day about this because I thought this needs to get out there. I guarantee you there are going to be parents that hear this that say, I had no idea. Oh my goodness, this makes me feel better.
Yeah, no, self-driving cars is a great example of a type of technology that will open doors for independence. The ability to take yourself to the doctor, to the pharmacy, the ability to participate in these social elements. It's another reason why things like Uber were exciting to me. Whatever I may sometimes rant about certain companies, the access and the opening of opportunities. I'll tell you a big one you mentioned earlier: finances, personal finances. Obviously, I work in the financial services industry, and I'm very passionate about it. I also work in XR and AR, and I'm very passionate about where those things combine. And as the financial services industry has been moving more and more, especially on the wealth management side, to financial wellness as a concept, seeing
Yes.
finance as part of wellness, one of the things that keeps coming up is that we're facing the greatest transfer of wealth in history as people die and leave money to much younger people. And so you're going to have this tremendous series of transactions and changes and so on going on, and all these tools developing. And there are tools out there that are meant to help you understand better why, for example, an ETF or a target date fund might be more appropriate for you if you're not going to retire for 30 years than a stock and so on, or maybe why you should stay out of Dogecoin or not put your money in GameStop and all the other things that happen, and help you distinguish. If you have a strong fear of being left out by financial services opportunities, there are companies that will lead the way, and there's certain major companies. I can't go into which ones because they're clients,
Mm-hmm.
or because I don't want to name one over the other. But there's financial services companies that are giving this a lot of thought, both established players and startups. Um, and obviously, you've got the social media companies trying to enter the fray, and I have my opinions on those companies as well. So everyone's trying to figure out and crack sort of how do we allow you to understand your own behavior? How do we allow you to, every time I look down at my phone and it tells me how much screen time I've spent, I'm like, oh my,
I know it.
I'm like,
I
oh
know it.
God,
I know it.
it's so depressing. And I'm like, well, I wasn't doing anything else. But it does actually remind you of that. And uh, I think that we're only beginning to scratch the surface. I'll give you a great example just based on your experiences. Imagine if you are a high functioning autistic adult who's worked very hard to establish a nice career, and you are asked to go, if this ever happens again, over to meet clients in a culture that's very different from your own. It can be an intimidating thing for anybody to have to learn the subtle social cues of
Right.
another culture. It's a real problem for anybody, right? And for
Yes.
you to have to take on that extra emotional baggage of the changes, the trips, and so on. Having guide tools there. It's funny because Hotel Chain X that we both know so much about has one of their chains that I swear to God I have woken up in beds in that chain and not known what city I was in, because the rooms are identical in the layout and the
Yes.
art.
Yes, I
and
know.
and I've been like, you're like, where the hell am I?
Yes.
Especially if you've traveled a lot. I'll never forget, and this is what I cite as talk about first world absurdity. I had a week where I was in New York City on a Friday night for, I think, for a Yankees playoff game. And then Saturday, I flew to Utah. And like by Saturday afternoon, I was in Bryce, Canyon. And I was sitting there and I was like, this is ridiculous. This kind of change. I was literally at a Yankees playoff game last night. Now I'm in Bryce Canyon. Modern life's amazing. And I've had other situations like that. And for me, that kind of change is very exciting. For my cousin, that kind of change would have been miserable,
Yes.
terrifying. And and it's a shame. And as we find ways to open these experiences up for people, it'll also allow them to share their stories more, which is the other exciting thing, right? To
Hmm.
be able to sort of find ways to say, oh, I'd like to share this on social media, and maybe to have some way to evaluate it and say, oh, you know what, maybe you don't want to share that on social media because you won't like have people respond and so on. and
Yes.
and not so much mind control or the machine controlling you, but giving you tips and social cues and saying, hey, I know that you think that going on and doing a 10-minute rant about how no one likes your stuff is a vent for you, but you should know here's how some people might interpret that and consider it
Yes.
and learn from it, before you get into the situation.
No, I completely agree with you. I mean, it's funny you bring that up because I ran a clubhouse. I was a moderator of a clubhouse room this morning with a couple other people, and the topic was do Americans doing business in Dubai and the GCC, especially primarily small businesses going over there. And I have someone that we're going to be bringing an announcement forward pretty soon that we're working with. I'll tell you off this podcast who it
Sure,
is and what we're
no
doing.
worries.
Yeah. And he he would happen to be in the room. And one of the things that we all talked about, because there were people from KSA, Saudi Arabia,
Mhm.
Kuwait, Bahrain, UAE, even Yemen in there. And we were talking about it. And that's one of the things we talked about was sometimes because we use more slang in America
Yeah.
and sometimes the way that we behave, we're offensive to them. And we don't realize we're being offensive,
Hmm.
and these are things that I would tell clients when I used to go over there with clients, do not do this, do not do that. Like, don't show them the soles of your feet, of your
Yeah.
shoes. Okay.
Yeah.
And, I have, grown ass adults who, have are lawyers and doctors and stuff look at me like, oh, come on. Okay. For Peyton, if I said to Peyton, don't do that, he would be so stressed the entire time he wouldn't even want to go
Yeah.
because he'd be so afraid that he'd do something wrong that if he did go, he would sit the whole time like this, and that's not good. And I think what you're talking about, if there's a way to kind of almost practice some of this, he could do. I said to him the other day, do you want to get in this clubhouse room with
Hmm.
me? Because we were the one that you came in, the chilling and grilling, right?
Oh yeah.
And, with Chris. And no, he says no. So we're doing another one this Friday, and then we have another one the next Friday. And the one on the, I think it's the 5th of March, we're doing, it's called Chillin', Grillin' and Awesomism. Okay. And we're going to talk about how one of the reasons why we got a Traeger grill was so that Peyton could grill, because it's not the flame. Okay, because it's the
Right.
pellets. Okay.
Right.
And he wanted to do stuff with his brothers when they came over, and smoke, because my husband's always smoking briskets, things like that.
Oh
Okay.
man, I'm getting
And
hungry.
yeah, I know. And so we're going to talk about those things. And these kind of, he said, no, 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 because he's nervous about it. I said, Peyton, it's fine. If you say something wrong, people say things wrong all the time. So I've got 2 weeks to prepare him for this. And, that's a situation that really doesn't, I mean, if somebody's mean to him, they will be out of the room. I'll just,
For
bump them
sure.
out of the room. But you're right. I mean, there's a particular young man, he's not even that young, he's older than Peyton, who's autistic, who probably weekly goes on a tirade on Twitter because people unfollow him, and he takes it so personal, and he's
Yeah.
autistic. And I've tried to talk to him offline and say, people get angrier at you when you do that. Please, I know it hurts your feelings. Call me, text me,
Yeah.
rant to me. And I think what you're talking about is so much bigger and so much more important than maybe somebody who's listening to this that isn't involved in the autism world realizes.
Hmm. No, and obviously this isn't limited to autism. There's so many things. Technology, as I said before, technology brings great stuff and terrible stuff. The internet has brought us wonderful things, and also some really, really horrible things. I think it's exposed elements of lazy, on the fly human cruelty that would have been best
Yes.
left alone. Um, and um, and that's going to happen, but one of the real benefits of augmented reality is that I really think it's going to allow people to standardize experiences, to share experiences in ways that are surprisingly safe, and also that will do things we haven't even thought about yet. I watched the other day. I was absolutely blown away watching that spacecraft land on Mars.
Mm-hmm.
In my lifetime, I actually, it's one thing. I told a friend of mine, isn't this great? They're like, oh, I saw that in a movie. I'm like, yeah, in a movie, it didn't actually happen. Like, this is actually happening, right? And they're like, oh, I've seen space battles. I'm like, you stink. Um, but but the idea that we're pushing these actual boundaries is exciting to me, because we're going to have ways to share experiences and to learn from them, and to learn very difficult lessons. One of the things that my company does, my side company, Seedbolt, is we helped with working with a great partner of ours to build virtual and augmented reality safety training, right?
Oh,
For
nice.
for a certain industry that's going through a lot of changes now. That technology can be used for education as well. There's no reason anymore for someone to have to learn for the first time um, what's dangerous about being on an oil rig itself, right? There's no
Right.
reason for someone who's never climbed up and done maintenance on a wind powered, on a windmill, right? To have to do that for the first time in that situation. And so this whole idea of giving people an understanding of the experience before they do it has tremendous applications for the safety industry as well in general. For doctors performing complex surgeries, people that want to practice. There's so much it's going to affect. And I read today someone was saying that in 5 years, or maybe 4 years, we'll all be like in that one of those films where everyone's moving stuff around and so on and so forth. And technology almost never works exactly as you expected. Like, who would expect that we would have had little pocket keychains with cats on them, but not like a rocket car? I mean, who
Yeah,
knows? You know,
exactly.
and what we choose to do with technology, it's been said so many times, but like I have access to all the human data on Earth, and I'm watching, a video of someone's dog, and they're interpreting what the dog's saying for
Yeah.
humor, and I'm like, okay, well done, Mike. You've really pushed the boundaries, but as we raise our game, there's a book, I don't know if you ever read it, called The Better Angels of Our Nature.
No, I haven't.
that points out just how relatively peaceful the world has become versus the way it used to be. And I would love nothing more than, in either our or in Peyton's lifetime, since I don't know if I don't, who knows how long I'll be around, right? But I mean, for that to be said of mental wellness and health, of inner peace, and I'm not trying to say that like sound like a hippie or something, but of actually being able to find peace with yourself. Because life is tough. I made a lot of mistakes when I was young, just
Me
stupid
too.
stuff, stupid stuff that probably was my own battles with, things like mental health or just issues I had with the world or whatever. And you can't change the past, but
Right.
the better the tools you have to learn and prepare, the more you can spare people from feeling that pain and that regret and so on. Um, and it really gives, in the face of all the pessimism, an extraordinary optimism that maybe makes me seem very naive. I've always believed very strongly. Cynicism is a very dark emotion. Skepticism, I'm a fan. I believe skepticism is a good thing. Cynicism is ultimately an excuse not to take action. It's an
Right.
excuse to think the worst in other people,
Yeah.
and it really is it's a tremendous oar in the water dragging the boat. And so I choose skepticism and optimism at the same time, and of course, make mistakes all over the place, but hopefully try to see what gets us there. And again, XR and AR and VR were for me until a few years ago academic. Then I started this side company with one of my best friends, and it's been a really interesting experience for us, and hopefully it's something that we're going to grow in. But I hope that my various passions come together and we get to work on some projects in the space eventually. And obviously, then I'll have a lot more intelligent things to say, or or less dumb things to say about it. So
Well, you gave me a lot of hope today. I love this. I mean, you were saying that we've all made a lot of mistakes. This is something that I'm really struggling with right now because of different situations in my life. And there is nothing that bothers me more. And this is something that I've really been talking to my 3 older children about lately is if people are angry at you for things you did in the past, you need to move away from those people because it is the old adage of we did the best we could with the tools available to us at the time. You don't know what all exterior circumstances were going on in someone's life, why they made the choices they did. I can
mm,
tell you probably 500 things in my past that I wish I had never done. And I don't mean like to the average person out there, horrible things, but just things that I wish I had never done, but I did them for either self survival mentally or self survival emotionally.
mhm.
And it's very easy for people on the outside to come in and judge you and say, well, I think this is terrible. You did this, you did that. Blah, 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 blah. And this is why I have this one thing that I say all the time that my therapist, when I was diagnosed with GAD, taught me. She said, if people would spend as much time reflecting as they do deflecting, the world would be a lot less full of bullies and anger.
Yeah,
Because if we look inside, they may not have acted the way I acted in a situation, but let's be honest, they didn't live my life. You don't live my life. I don't live your life. I don't live
mhm.
my children's lives. My children don't live my life. And one of the nicest things that my daughter said to me the other day, I was having a real heart to heart with her about some other people in my life. And she said, Mom, you can never, ever put a price on mental health. And they will never step up to make sure that your mental health is completely good. You have to make sure your mental health is really
Yeah,
good. So that price, if that price is moving people out of your life because they can't step up and understand that some of the decisions you made, you didn't want to make, your mental health is way better. You should not have to keep apologizing. It's the old adage of stop looking in the rear view mirror because you can't go back there, look forward. And
well, sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say this real quick. I was in a Clubhouse room the other day, and this guy said something that was probably the most profound thing I've ever heard anybody say, and it was so simple. He said, whenever you approach a business situation or a personal situation, I don't ever want to hear the term ROI again. He said, I want you to start using the term ROT. It's return on time. Because he said, you can be the richest man in the world, you can be Elon Musk, you can be Bill Gates, you can never get your time back. You can
Mhm.
always make money back. And he said, I think if we all started living in the time that we're in, so much more negative things would not happen. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, because who knows where we're going to be 6 hours from now? What can happen?
Oh yeah.
Whoever saw a year ago, a little over a year ago, that we'd be living through this pandemic that we did.
No, it's funny because so I was very fortunate to become, to get vaccinated. I'm part of Group 1B. Not only from being overweight, but also I had a really, as you may remember, really bad pneumonia case a few years ago
Yes.
that took me out, took me down for more than 3 months. And so I'm not going to change almost any of my life. However, there's a bar I used to go to all the time. I'm going to go back and stop in, have a cheeseburger and a beer. And that's really, I'm not going to do much more in dining. But I don't remember where I was telling that story. My gosh, where was I going to go with that? Maybe I just want a beer. No. What I was going to say is you can't go back. But so you said something earlier that just sort of clicked in my brain. It's been funneling around. My brain works like, if you ever put one of those pennies in the thing at the mall, that just like that, right? Um, about Peyton turning 18 and being scary. We as a society have very specific benchmarks once you're an adult for success. And it's really marriage, kids, house, 50th birthday, anniversary. And if you're not participating in those, maybe you're single, maybe you just don't choose to. Career and productivity is really one of your only remaining benchmarks. And I think that I'm hopeful that the push towards mental health, wellness, and care will allow us to realize that you can set your own benchmarks for what constitutes success, and sort of say, I don't need to prove myself by meeting all those marks.
Right.
Nor do I have to feel like I've turned 18, now I'm 21, now I'm lost in the desert, because my next important birthday is really 30, then 50, then there's empty decades between them, right? So I'm hopeful that I think there's a lot that we as Americans have to contemplate about our current situation, about our society, about what we consider wellness and good behavior and health, and so on and so forth. And I think that technology may give us tools to help really explore that. Mind you, people that are in technology tend to be more entrepreneurial and optimistic by nature, especially if they're in cutting edge technology, or completely dismal. And if you're in security, you think the world is essentially 8 billion criminals and yourself stuck on a rock, right? So, but somewhere there's a happy medium. And I am very encouraged. I actually was talking the other day to a friend of mine who she's one of the most brilliant people I know. I knew her in high school. I knew she was going to be successful. She's been all over the place in terms of extraordinary, wonderful career in physics and aerospace.
Oh, wow.
Um, Really extraordinary person, smart and funny and interesting, all that kind of stuff. She has a wonderful family, and she was talking about just trying to get more attention to female leadership in STEM, and then science,
Right.
technology, and so on. And I think that hopefully there'll be a time where that's just a given, right? Where people
Right.
understand the extraordinary contributions that have already been made. And likewise, I'm excited to see what happens in terms of the growth of autistic adults and autistic leadership in business and STEM and technology,
Me too.
in the arts, in a place where it's not seen as something that's coming from people with a disability, but it's just another area of people with people taking their abilities and their pros and cons and so on, and finding ways to express themselves, to find the joy that comes from expressing yourself in art, to find the joy that comes from scientific discovery, from finding precision and accuracy and testing things, and as Feynman would have said, the pleasure of finding things out. So that's where I choose to place my optimism. Not so much on my own endeavors, which are just one wreck after the next, but like a lamprey, if I cling to the positive sharks, eventually I'll be pulled forward. So
No, I agree. And, I really thank you for coming on here. This was awesome. I want to definitely have you on again soon, because I love this conversation. It honestly, I'm not just saying this.
appreciate
It
it.
really gives me a lot of hope. It does. And
Cool.
I agree with you. And this was, I wish everybody, and I mean this, I wish everybody had a friend like you,
Appreciate that.
because you're there for me so many times. And, sometimes I just get so overwhelmed trying to help people and trying to figure out what to do and how to do it. And I can come to you and you keep me, on that guide. And I appreciate that. And I'm trying very hard to take that kind of mindset and bring it forward through my podcasts and my blogs and, Peyton's little business and, Awesomism Mom in general, and just offer hope for people and offer some sort of guidance and say, hey, look, I know the world can be a terribly scary place, but guess what? Let's start trying to open some of those doors down the path where there's light at the end of it.
Yeah.
And, I mean, if you look, all those items right there, amazing,
Yeah. Well, and use the right word, path. Listen, we're all on a path. The other day I was watching one of these things on YouTube about how big the universe is. I was like, oh my goodness, what am I doing here? But you're on a path. There's a philosophical movement. I know we're over time, so I'll make this my last pseudo intellectual comment of the day. There's a philosophical movement, less wrong, trying to be less wrong every day. And it's something that I've sort of adopted as I've tried to, become a better person or a less horrible person. And I think that it's worth trying. It's worth trying to be less wrong every day and getting up and doing one less dumb thing, and learning a little bit and moving on. And I try to do that in my work and also my personal life. And I appreciate the opportunity to come in here and babble about it.
Oh, I loved it. This was fantastic. I looked down at the clock and I'm like, wait, what? It was that.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. No, I appreciate you so much coming on. And, that is a great thing to end on. Instead of putting it on ourselves where we go, okay, I got to do what's right. If we start going, I want to do do one less wrong thing. I think sometimes the perspective, and again, that's why I called that blog about you, his perspective. I love your perspective on things. And I love the way we're ending this on, let's just all try to do one less thing wrong tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And let's spread that act of kindness towards other people, especially those in the autism world. So thank you so much, Michael. And you will be on again soon. I promise you that.
Sounds good. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.